Learn English through stories D18 PDF. Adapted and modified by Kulwant Singh Sandhu. Contents 1. Romy and the Wildfire. 2. Grammar page. 1. Romy and the Wildfire by Ruskin Bond. Romy was about to mount his bicycle when he saw smoke rising from behind the distant line of trees. "It looks like a forest fire," said Prem, his friend and classmate. "It's well to the east," said Romy. "Nowhere near the road." "There's a strong wind," said Prem, looking at the dry leaves swirling across the road. It was the middle of May, and it hadn't rained in the Terry for several weeks. The grass was brown, the leaves of the trees covered with dust. Even though it was getting on to 6 o'clock in the evening, the boys' shirts were damp with sweat. "It will be getting dark soon," said Pram. "You'd better spend the night at my house." "No," I said, "I'd be home tonight. My father isn't keeping well. The doctor has given me some tablets for him." "You'd better hurry then. The fire seems to be spreading." "Oh, it's far off. It will take me only 40 minutes to ride through the forest. Bye, Pram. See you tomorrow." Romy mounted his bicycle and pedaled off down the main road of the village, scattering stray hens, stray dogs, and stray villagers. "Hey, look where you're going!" shouted an angry villager, leaping out of the way of the oncoming bicycle. "Do you think you own the road?" "Of course I own it," called Romy cheerfully, and cycled on. His own village lay about 7 miles distant on the other side of the forest. But there was only a primary school in his village, and Romy was now in high school. His father, who was a fairly wealthy sugarcane farmer, had only recently bought him the bicycle. Romy didn't care too much for school and felt there weren't enough holidays. But he enjoyed the long rides, and he got on well with his classmates. He might have stayed the night with Prem had it not been for the tablets which the village doctor, had given him for his father. Rome's father was having back trouble, and the medicine had been specially prepared from local herbs. Having been given such a fine bicycle, Romy felt that the least he could do in return was to get those tablets to his father as early as possible. He put his head down and rode swiftly out of the village. Ahead of him, the smoke rose from the burning forest, and the sky glowed red. He had soon left the village far behind. There was a slight climb, and Romy had to push harder on the pedals to get over the rise. Once over the top, the road went winding down to the edge of the subtropical forest. A dog from the village ran beside him, barking furiously. Romy shouted to the dog, encouraging him in the race. Then the road straightened. It was the part Romy enjoyed most. He relaxed, stopped pedaling, and allowed the bicycle to glide gently down the slope. Soon the wind was rushing past him, blowing his hair about his face and making his shirt billow out behind. He burst into a song. The dog, seeing the forest ahead, turned back to the village. It was afraid of the forest. The smoke was thicker now, and Romy caught the smell of burning timber. But ahead of him the road was clear. He rode on. It was a rough, dusty road, cut straight through the forest. Tall trees grew on either side, cutting off the last of the daylight. But the spreading glow of the fire on the right lit up the road, and giant tree shadows danced before the boy on the bicycle. Usually the road was deserted. This evening it was alive with wild creatures fleeing from the forest fire. The first animal that Romy saw was a hare, leaping across the road in front of him. It was followed by several more hares. Then a band of monkeys streamed across, chattering excitedly. "They'll be safe on the other side," thought Romy. "The fire won't cross the road." But it was coming closer. And realizing this, Romy pedaled harder. In half an hour he should be out of the forest. Suddenly, from the side of the road, several pheasants rose in the air, and with a whoosh, flew low across the path, just in front of the oncoming bicycle. Taken by surprise, Romy fell off. When he picked himself up and began brushing his clothes, he saw that his knee was bleeding. It wasn't a deep cut, but he allowed it to bleed a little, took out his handkerchief and bandaged his knee. Then he mounted the bicycle again. He rode a bit slower now, because birds and animals kept coming out of the bushes. Not only pheasants but smaller birds too were streaming across the road: parrots, jungle crows, owls, magpies, and the air was filled with their cries. Everyone's on the move, thought Romy. It must be a really big fire. He could see the flames now, reaching out from behind the trees on his right, and he could hear the crackling as the dry leaves caught fire. The air was hot on his face. Leaves, still alight or turning to cinders, floated past. A herd of deer crossed the road, and Romy had to stop until they had passed. Then he mounted again and rode on. But now, for the first time, he was feeling afraid. From ahead came a faint clanging sound. It wasn't an animal sound, Romy was sure of that. A fire engine? There were no fire engines within 50 miles. The clanging came nearer, and Romy discovered that the noise came from a small boy who was running along the forest path, 2 milk cans clattering at his side. "Teju," called Romy, recognizing the boy from a neighboring village. "What are you doing out here?" "Trying to get home, of course," said Teju, panting along beside the bicycle. "Jump on," said Romy, stopping for him. Teju was only 8 or 9, a couple of years younger than Romy. He had come to deliver milk to some road workers, but the workers had left at the first signs of the fire, and Teju was hurrying home with his cans still full of milk. He got up on the crossbar of the bicycle, and Romy moved on again. He was quite used to carrying friends on the crossbar. "Keep beating your milk cans," said Romy. "Like that, the animals will know we are coming. My bell doesn't make enough noise. I'm going to get a horn for my cycle." "I never knew there were so many animals in the jungle," said Teju. "I saw a python in the middle of the road. It stretched right across." "What did you do?" "Just kept running and jumped right over it." Teju continued to chatter, but Rome's thoughts were on the fire, which was much closer now. Flames shot up from the dry grass and ran up the trunks of trees and along the branches. Smoke billowed out above the forest. Rome's eyes were hurting, and his hair and eyebrows felt scorched. He was feeling tired, but he couldn't stop now. He had to get beyond the range of the fire. Another 10 or 15 minutes of steady riding would get them to the small wooden bridge that spanned the little river separating the forest from the sugarcane fields. Once across the river, they would be safe. The fire could not touch them on the other side, because the forest ended at the river's edge. But could they get to the river in time? Clan, 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 went Tegu's milk cans. But the sound of the fire grew louder too. A tall silk cotton tree, its branches leaning across the road, had caught fire. They were almost beneath it when there was a crash, and a burning branch fell to the ground a few yards in front of them. The boys had to get off the bicycle and leave the road, forcing their way through a tangle of thorny bushes on the left, dragging and pushing at the bicycle and only returning to the road some distance ahead of the burning tree. "We won't get out in time," said Teju, back on the crossbar but feeling disheartened. "Yes, we will," said Romy, pedaling with all his might. "The fire hasn't crossed the road as yet." Even as he spoke, he saw a small flame leap up from the grass on the left. It wouldn't be long before more sparks and burning leaves were blown across the road to kindle the grass on the other side. "Oh, look," exclaimed Romy, bringing the bicycle to a sudden stop. "What's wrong now?" asked Teju, rubbing his sore eyes. And then, through the smoke, he saw what was stopping them. An elephant was standing in the middle of the road. Teju slipped off the crossbar, his cans rolling on the ground, bursting open and spilling their contents. The elephant was about 40 feet away. It moved about restlessly, its big ears flapping as it turned its head from side to side, wondering which way to go. From far to the left, where the forest was still untouched, a herd of elephants moved towards the river. The leader of the herd raised his trunk and trumpeted a call. Hearing it, the elephant in the road raised its own trunk and trumpeted a reply. Then it shambled off into the forest in the direction of the herd, leaving the way clear. "Come, Teju, jump on," urged Romy. "We can't stay here much longer." Teju forgot about his milk cans and pulled himself up on the crossbar. Romy ran forward with the bicycle to gain speed and mounted swiftly. He kept as far as possible to the left of the road, trying to ignore the flames, the crackling, the smoke, and the scorching heat. It seemed that all the animals who could get away had done so. The exodus across the road had stopped. "We won't stop again," said Romy, gritting his teeth. "Not even for an elephant." "We're nearly there," said Teju. He was perking up again. A jackal, overcome by the heat and smoke, lay in the middle of the path, either dead or unconscious. Romy did not stop. He swerved round the animal. Then he put all his strength into one final effort. He covered the last 100 yards at top speed, and then they were out of the forest, freewheeling down the sloping road to the river. "Look!" shouted Teju. "The bridge is on fire!" Burning embers had floated down onto the small wooden bridge, and the dry, ancient timber had quickly caught fire. It was now burning fiercely. Romy did not hesitate. He left the road, riding the bicycle over sand and pebbles. Then with a rush they went down the river bank and into the water. The next thing they knew they were splashing around, trying to find each other in the darkness. "Help!" cried Teju. "I'm drowning." "Don't be silly," said Romy. "The water isn't deep, it's only up to the knees. Come here and grab hold of me." Teju splashed across and grabbed Romy by the belt. "The water's so cold," he said, his teeth chattering. "Do you want to go back and warm yourself?" asked Romy. "Some people are never satisfied. Come on, help me get the bicycle up. It's down here, just where we are standing." Together they managed to heave the bicycle out of the water and stand it upright. "Now sit on it," said Romy. "I'll push you across." "We'll be swept away," said Teju. "No, we won't. There's not much water in the river at this time of the year, but the current is quite strong in the middle, so sit still, all right?" "All right," said Teju nervously. Romy began guiding the bicycle across the river, one hand on the seat and one hand on the handlebar. The river was shallow and sluggish in midsummer. Even so, it was quite swift in the middle. But having got safely out of the burning forest, Romy was in no mood to let a little river defeat him. He kicked off his shoes, knowing they would be lost. And then, gripping the smooth stones of the riverbed with his toes, he concentrated on keeping his balance and getting the bicycle and Teju through the middle of the stream. The water here came up to his waist, and the current would have been too strong for Teju. But when they reached the shallows, Teju got down and helped Romy push the bicycle. They reached the opposite bank and sank down on the grass. "We can rest now," said Romy. "But not all night. I've got some medicine to give to my father." He felt in his pockets and found that the tablets in their envelope had turned into a soggy mess. "Oh well, he had to take them with water anyway," he said. They watched the fire as it continued to spread through the forest. It had crossed the road down which they had come. The sky was a bright red, and the river reflected the color of the sky. Several elephants had found their way down to the river. They were cooling off by spraying water on each other with their trunks. Further downstream there were deer and other animals. Romy and Teju looked at each other in the glow from the fire. They hadn't known each other very well before. But now they felt they had been friends for years. "What are you thinking about?" asked Teju. "I'm thinking," said Romy, "that even if the fire is out in a day or two, it will be a long time before the bridge is repaired, so it will be a nice long holiday from school." "But you can walk across the river," said Teju. "You just did it." Impossible, said Romy. It's much too swift. 2. Grammar page. This article was converted for free by the courtesy of Audio Read. If you enjoy the service, please consider upgrading your plan to listen to up to 500,000 words per article. Simply go to audioread.com/ad and you'll see the upgrade option. Your support helps us keep making the service better. Thank you.